All right, 1102, let's talk about what we got going on this week. So, this week we have our first literary analysis essay that is on Edgar Allan Poe's The Cask of Amontillado. As to what you need to do with that, go ahead in your Blackboard shell. This is in shell 2. Let me open up our course real quick just to verify that. So it is in, shell 2, week 3. Go to week 3. First, what you're going to see there are all of the little snippets from the text, the physical text, portable literature, or the e-text, whichever version you are using. I've put in all of the e-text sections related to what we're doing this week. So you'll see when you open up chapter or week 3 in shell 2, chapter 2, writing literary arguments, okay? Whenever we write an essay in this class, I recommend that you refer to chapter 2 for pointers, okay? We wrote an argumentative essay in 2 versions in 1101, the second one with a research enhanced component. But really, anything that you write or say that has a purpose to it is, in its own way, an argument. So this analysis essay is an argument, okay? So I recommend that you guys, for guidance and there's a student example there as well that is worth your while. I think it is on the Alice Walker short story, Everyday Use, that we're not reading this term, but it might be worth looking at it. Let's go ahead and actually look. What the analysis is, it is the writing assignment in the book that comes after all of the readings in Chapter 10. So Cask of Amontillado is part of our Chapter 10 unit point of view. And if you guys go ahead and flip to Chapter 10, or if you're using the online version, scroll to the end of Chapter 10. And what you will see is a writing assignment section, and it is a few questions there. I ask you to do number 3 for this one, for this first writing assignment. This is on page 280, okay? The pagination is the same for the online and the physical text, okay? So you see here that number 3, writing suggestions, okay, on 280. It actually deals with both Cask of Amontillado and barn burning. Just forget about barn burning, okay? I don't think we read the Faulkner, we read A Rose for Emily for last week, but we're not reading barn burning for, at least not for this semester here with me this term. So when you read number 3 for your writing suggestion, just take out all of the barn burning stuff and focus on Edgar Allan Poe's Cask of Amontillado. And when you go into the literary analysis Dropbox, you'll see the attachment there. And I've kind of already done that for you. I've kind of reformatted the question, having taken out all of the Faulkner barn burning stuff, okay? So, what you need to do is think about this story in terms of point of view. Fittingly enough, it's part of the point of view section. So, the Cask of Amontillado deals with a crime that essentially goes unpunished. Montresor chains and walls up Fortunato, and to no consequence, at least not in the confines of the story. Okay. In what sense does this story's use of point of view, so you have to think of what is the point of view of the story. It's helpful, by the way, to always read the introductory material. So the point of view section, all the introductory material that comes before the stories themselves, to understand what we mean by point of view. It's usually the perspective of the narrator, the narration, first person, second person, third person, who is speaking, okay? Why does that matter? Why does this perspective matter, okay, in the context of the story we're reading? So how does this story's use of point of view shape the treatment of the crime in question? So in other words, it's told in first person, it's from Montresor's perspective. Why does it matter that it's from his perspective in terms of the crime that he commits? Okay? For instance, how does point of view determine how much readers know about the motives for the crime's basic circumstances, and the extent to which the crime is justified? So you kind of have to marinate on this and think about it. Reading the introductory material for Chapter 10 is going to be a help, okay? And I've inserted the Chapter 10 point of view section from the e-text in our week 3 folder here as well. So I recommend that you read that. It's classic essay rules, 2 to 3 pages, Times New Roman, double-spaced, MLA heading, title, page numbers, all that fun stuff. You should use textual evidence from the text to support your thesis. What does that mean if you use textual evidence? If it's a direct quote or a paraphrase, it'll be one of the two of those, if not both. You need to cite your source, okay? Now, when you cite from an anthology, which is what our book is, okay? So, of course, you're citing from an Edgar Allan Poe short story, The Cask of Amontillado. But the page number is the page number in the anthology, okay? And the author's last name is going to be Kirschner and Mandel, okay? It is the editor's last name that you're going to use, okay? So when you cite your source, and I think the example in Chapter 2 for literary argument, the student example actually has the way in which you need to cite your source. And in fact, it does. If you go to page 44, for example, you will see everyday use from the Portable Literature textbook. Okay, so I would use the student example as an example of how to use in-text citations. Okay. That's a good model to follow, beginning on page 39 and going to page 44. And there's another argument, analysis argument that follows that as well on page 44. Okay. So you have an example to follow there for citation, for structure, format, etc., etc. So our first literary analysis is due this week, but that's not it. Okay. We also have a journal this week. The journal has to do with chapters 8 and 9. So you have other stories to read this week. Remember last week I advised you all to have read The Cask of Amontillado, annotated it, read it carefully in anticipation for this week for this first essay, but that's not all you have to do. You have 2 other stories that you have to read as well. Chapter 8 is about character. That's the title of the chapter. And the story I want you to read is Zadie Smith's The Girl with Bangs, and that is on pages 188, and it goes to page 192. And the good thing about this textbook is they actually have journal entries at the end of each story. So for the journal this week, I want you to do the journal entry on chapter 8, which is write a farewell email to the narrator from Charlotte. Try to explain her feelings for the narrator as well as her motivation for shaving her head and for deciding to marry Maurice. Okay? But that's only half of the journal assignment this week. You also have to read chapter 9, which is all about setting the Sherman Alexie story. This is what it means to say Phoenix, Arizona. That story begins on pages 206 and goes to 215, okay? It has a journal entry as well on page 216. You are to do that journal entry as well, which is, at the end of the story, when Thomas returns home, he hears, quote, a new story come to him in the silence, close quote, after he closes the door. What kind of story do you think comes to him at this point? So, one journal assignment for this week, one journal entry. but you have to answer both journals in Chapter 8, the Zadie Smith story, and Chapter 9, the Sherman Alexie story. It's formatted just like all of our other journals have been up to this point. When you guys go in your Blackboard, you will see in journals, our same journals folder, okay, go there to answer the journal. So it's Journal 5, Character and Setting. And all I've done is copied and pasted the journals from the e-text into our journal this week. So you'll see what I just read out loud in the journal. And you do the same thing you've always been doing. You have to write 2 paragraphs, minimum, okay? 1 paragraph for the journal for Chapter 8, 1 paragraph for the journal for Chapter 9. So a setting a paragraph and a character paragraph. So 1 for the Zadie Smith story, and then 1 for the Sherman Alexie story. Okay? So just to recap, 1 literary analysis essay on the Cask of Amontillado. The instructions, the prompt is attached in your folder. Okay? It's the writing suggestion that comes at the end of the Chapter 10 section on point of view. Then you have your journal assignment that you have to do as well. It's a 2-parter, 2 questions that I just explained. 1 on character, the Zadie Smith story that I just read aloud, and then the 1 on the Sherman Alexie story, Chapter 9 setting that I just read aloud. Okay? So that's it, folks, for this week. I hope you all are sort of settling in, knowing how to use the book or ebook at this point. I haven't heard any further complications or complaints from Mr. Churchwell or from anyone else, so I trust all is a go. So guys, have a good 3rd week of our 2nd quarter, and I will touch base with you at the beginning of next week. See you then. Bye.